Today's episode is about Depeche Mode, the British giants of synth pop. We'll be looking at the drum tracks of 3 of their biggest hits. Coincidentally, the drum patterns are ascending in difficulty, so there will be something in this for all of you, whether you want to learn about creating a functional and minimalist beat, or you just want to see me suffer. Our focus is not so much on recreating the exact drum sounds, we want to understand what makes these drum tracks work on a fundamental level. So let's get started. Hello everyone, this is... In 1981, Depeche Mode released their first album Speak and Spell, which also marked the end of the Vince Clarke era, who quit the band soon after. This was before Martin Gore took over as the main songwriter and steered the band's sound into the darker direction they are known for today. This record is full of catchy energetic synth pop, and a prime example is the album's most popular track, Just Can't Get Enough, which became a top 10 hit in the UK. It's a well-known fact that Depeche Mode used the Korg KR55 drum machine to record this song. That was a preset rhythm box, very much in the vein of the CR78 or Mini Pops. But you won't actually get very far with just the KR55 sounds. That would still leave half of the instruments missing, which were probably made with the synthesizers they had in the studio. So we thought it might be fun to tackle those vintage drum sounds entirely with our trusty DRM-1 drum synthesizer. If you want to follow along, you can grab these samples for free right now on our Patreon. The link is in the video description. So yes, there are only 4 elements in this drum track, and each of them has a very distinct role. The kick drum is of course the pulse of the song, a steady stream of quarter notes. I mean, this is danceable Western pop music after all. On the very opposite end of the frequency spectrum, there's the rhythmic glue. That spot is often occupied by the hi-hat. In this song, it's a very crickety electronic shaker. We went for something in between, but you can just use anything that makes a very short, bright noise like a cabasa or maraca. Very unsurprisingly, our rhythmic foundation is completed by a snare backbeat on the 2 and 4. Simple, but it works extremely well, so who are we to judge? Let's mute the shaker and add the final ingredient. In the original, this is kind of a zappy metallic drum sound, but a hand clap will probably also do. Just make sure it's not too similar to the snare so their rhythmic figures can interact with each other instead of blending into one. But this sound's job is not only to serve as a counterpart to the snare, but also to introduce variation and interest into the drum track. Look out for me programming some variations on the sequencer. There's even one where a step is microtimed by a 30-second note. Ooh, advanced stuff. 9 years and 6 albums later, we arrive at Violator. This time Depeche Mode worked closely together with producer Mark Ellis, better known as Flood. The resulting album is what many would call the band's masterpiece. It is influenced by the past as much as it has shaped the future of electronic music itself. It also contained Enjoy the Silence, their best-selling single to date. Depeche Mode have often cited Kraftwerk as one of their main influences, and it really isn't hard to draw parallels to the zappy bass line from We Are the Robots or the eerie choir from Uranium. The drum track, on the other hand, is clearly a step up from Kraftwerk. It's ever evolving, there's always something changing after a few bars. During his talk at Sound Edit Festival 2011, Flood explained how he and Alan Wilder changed Enjoy the Silence from a serene ballad into an up-tempo disco number. For the beat, their approach basically was, get a drum track you like and copy it. While he obviously didn't name names and there is a lot of speculation, my money is on New Order's bizarre love triangle. And when I hear New Order, I immediately think of the Oberheim DMX drum machine. So we'll be building our track with this DMX emulation by GForce. One reason why the DMX fits so well, apart from its super punchy in-your-face sound, is because it has 3 different hi-hat sounds: closed, accented, and open. The open hat goes into the offbeat. The accented closed hat's mostly on the beat. And on step 10 we place a regular closed hat. Sounds a bit shorter and lower. Reduce the decay. And we're done. You'll probably want to high-pass these in a mix and add some effects, but for now we leave them as is. Kicks on every beat, of course. These stayed the same for the entire song. And, you probably guessed it, snares on the 2 and 4. This pattern gets extended to 2 pages, and on the first one, we'll add another hit right before the 3. And to make those snares even fatter, we're going to layer hand claps on top of them. That's also what New Order did on Blue Monday. Be careful with the hand clap volume though. Start low and slowly turn it up until it augments the snare without overpowering it. There's a very interesting percussion break in this song, and according to who sampled, Depeche Mode took it from a song that was released the year before, 10 Cities That's the Way Love Is, the Deep House Mix extended version to be more specific. To verify that claim, we recreated the sampled part. For our version we used a 909, plus a 707 and 727 combo. A very nice conga phrase. We have an unaccented high conga here, and the conga mutes are put to really good use. And both together. A pretty standard 90s house pattern, but it doesn't sound like the part in Enjoy the Silence yet. This was a tough nut to crack, since we found no mention of how they actually did it, so I experimented. A lot. And here's what I came up with. Add a volume shaper, a 16th note delay plus reverb to fill the gaps, kill the last 16th of the loop, and finally add some dirt, for example with a tape or tube overdrive. Use a low cut so it doesn't get too farty. On top of this the main pattern plays, but without the snare and clap and with a longer hi-hat decay. And we get a tiny but powerful snare fill at the end of the second bar. It all sounds a bit pitched down, so I think they may have added this to the 10-city loop before they slowed it down to fit the song. Here's a simple trick to make the hi-hats more interesting. Add a 16th note delay. Just one repeat, but experiment with the mix level and the high cut filter. This shaker does a similar job as the hi-hat delay. Just alternate between accented and unaccented. This adds some really nice texture. Two super complex snare fills. One even with 2 snare accent levels. It's crazy to think that two of Depeche Mode's biggest all-time hits were on the same album, Enjoy the Silence and Personal Jesus. The latter has been covered by many artists like Johnny Cash or Marilyn Manson. On this track, the band loosened their self-imposed ban on guitars even more, which helped turn the song into a country-flavored masterpiece. The training wheels come off. This is one of the most interesting and difficult drum patterns we've ever tackled, so buckle up. There are a few accounts on how the Personal Jesus drum track was created. Regardless of whether it was stomping on a piece of metal, flight cases, or a stairwell, or sampling all that and arranging it and playing it back in a nice reverby room, we'll recreate it in a way that's a bit more accessible, with everyday drum sounds. First off, we need 1/8 triplets for Personal Jesus, so set your sequencer scale accordingly. A 3/4 or 75% tempo multiplier. That gives you 1/8 triplets. And we need 12 steps per page. If you want a refresher on all of that, then check out our Drum Patterns Explained episode on Jean-Michel Jarre's Oxygen 4 and our Drum Machine 101 book over on Patreon. The first part is the iconic main drum loop that plays during most of the song. To get a natural amount of variation, we'll be using an acoustic drum plugin with multi-sampled drums. These react dynamically to velocities. And repeat hits will give you different samples. But that's optional. You can do this with regular one-shot samples as well. Kicks first. But we want a clear accent on this double hit. Then on top of that, we layer a low tom and a high tom. These ascending toms bring some nice repeating movement into the pattern. And because both toms play the double hit, the accent on the kick is amplified even more. One thing you can hear very prominently in the drums of Personal Jesus is a clicking sound. We'll use a rim click to introduce that flavor into our pattern. Softer hits at the beginning, full power on step 7, and declining again towards the end of the loop. And for even more clickiness, we'll put a slightly different rim on step 7. You can really see that this is where the emphasis lies. Without those rim clicks, the drum loop sounds too dull. They give it a lot of clarity and crispness. And now we're going to do something to the pattern that makes it sound a bit fuller and more human. As you can see, we have a few bursts of drum hits that all play at the same time. Let's use micro-timing to spread those toms and rim clicks around. Not by much. We don't want to completely separate the individual hits, we just want to make those compressed bursts of drum hits a bit more diffuse. Very much like a flam on a snare. Let's listen to it with and without the micro-timing. A few of the sounds in the originals sound more splashy, so let's complete the phrase by adding some hand claps. It's interesting how these seem to have different pitches, but that's caused entirely by the interaction with the other drums. Part 2 is a variation of Part 1 that leads into the verse. We want to repeat the double hit at the end of the pattern. So let's copy everything from step 6 to step 12, just before the pattern loops again. But this double hit sounds too weak. The energy on step 1 doesn't match. We want it to sound like the double hit in the middle, so let's extend the pattern to 2 bars. This will get a bit confusing because the beginning of bar 2 is tacked onto here and the rest just overflows onto the next page. To make this a lot more enjoyable for all of us, I'll cheat and put the project into 3/4 time signature. Now the sequencer neatly splits the pages after 12 steps. Okay, so in bar 2, we'll copy this heavier hit to the beginning. Let's hear it as a loop. Nice. We want these constant double hits to keep going for another 2 bars, so I'll copy this entire page 2 times. This will definitely need some variation. To make it less monotone, we can alternate the high and low sounds. The plan is that the kicks and toms will be taking turns, beginning here at the end of bar 1. Kill the kicks, kill the toms and rim clicks, kill the kicks, kill the toms and rim clicks, and so on and so forth. Very nice. Now we got an ebb and flow kind of thing going. Note that compared to part 1, we now have shifted the emphasis from the third beat to the first beat. On top of this, we'll add a tom fill to the end. On this track, we have a high, mid, and low tom. And each of them has 2 variations, an open hit and a rim shot. The tom rim shot sounds a bit higher than the open hit, so this gives us 6 different pitches in total to choose from. You don't have to use 6 different samples though. You can also get away with pitching a single tom sample up and down. Just use this as a rough guide. And now for the secret ingredient of many tom fills, a snare. Properly dosed, the snare gives the fill more body, dynamics and variation. A quick before and after. If you want, you can pan the fill from one side to another for even more movement. And now in context. For part 3 we'll again reuse part 1, but this time we'll shift or rotate it around by half a bar. The double hit is now at the end of the bar and the emphasis lies on the 1 instead of the 3. This makes for really interesting rhythmic changes when it's alternated with the main pattern. If your sequencer doesn't have that feature, then just program pattern 1 again, but shift it by half a bar, or do some copy-pasting. This is the reach out touch faith part. Very straightforward, and much more uniform than the other parts. Just some alternating velocities on the kick. And maybe a little less oomph on the hand claps. And on top of that goes our first reusable extra. A very simple snare fill. We still have our second drum set on track 2, so I'll just use that snare. This becomes much more interesting when we add a velocity ramp. Nothing cuts through a mix like a quick frequency sweep. You can easily create these disco zaps or laser sounds by taking some noise, putting it through a resonant high-pass filter, and animating that filter with an envelope. We'll put some of these in our sample pack, so you can zap away to your heart's content. On top of part 3, we usually get these on the 1 and 3. The zaps on top of part 1 are a little funkier. And sometimes there are also these rapid-fire lasers which get panned around. This could be a clap or a snare. It doesn't matter as long as it's got some snap at the beginning and lots of noise at the end. We used the mysterious Lin 9000 clap from our Word Up video, pitched it up, added a transient shaper and limiter to make it more dense and let it ring out longer. And finally, we used an EQ to carve out some frequencies. Be sure to trim this sound so that it ends just as the following kick starts. That will make it feel really snappy. These go either on the 2 or on the 4. Yes, another tom fill. The toms at the end are pretty straightforward. That's an ascending series of 8th triplet hits. But there is this short part leading up to the toms, and those are actually 32nd note hits. but only the last one lands on our 8th triplet grid. The usual strategy is to split this up into an 8th triplet pattern and a 32nd note pattern. So let's just do that. 2 pages, running at double speed. And some more dynamics for the rim click. A raspy metallic hi-hat. Here's one I whipped up with the Syntakt and some effects. Pan it to the right. And here's your yoga exercise for the day. Breathe in and out at a relaxing speed of 130 BPM. In 8th triplets, of course. Okay, now I feel a little lightheaded, but I think it's time to get the engine rolling. A big shout out to all of our patrons. Thanks to your support, we can keep making these videos.
Bunny.